313 Yada Yahowah, Shanah, years. 7. Selah, time to think. No greater love. There is a Mizmowr song which depicts the fulfillment of Matzah, describing what the Messiah endured to redeem the covenant family. This vivid portrayal is narrated in first person, similar to the 22nd Psalm, such that it is being told by the Nepesh, consciousness who carried our guilt into Sheol. This means that the voice of the psalm is that of Dowd's Nepesh, soul, communicating through time to reveal not only what he would achieve, but why he would make this sacrifice. Challenging this conclusion, there are those who would claim, based upon a superficial reading, that the psalm was written by either the sons of Korah and, or Heman the Ezrahite. So, is it possible that the king used another to scribe his message? I think not, especially considering the questions surrounding these names. When we first hear of Heman, and his brother Ethan, who is associated with the 89th Mizmowr, they are the sons of Zerach, a child of Judah through his scheming prostitute stepdaughter, Tamar. 1 Chronicles 2:6. This identification is appealing because with the Aleph prosthetic, Ezraki means of Zerach. And while this is the most complete identification of Heman Ezraki and his brother, Ethan, they could not have been sons of Korah because they were Yahwud, not Levites. 314 Ethan is listed as Ethan Ezraki, Zerach in 1 Kings 4:31. There, speaking of Solomon's unsurpassed wisdom, we are told, for he was wiser than all men, more than Ethan the Ezrahite, Heman, Calcol, and Dada, the sons of Mahal, whose fame was known in all the surrounding nations. However, now we have two new problems. First, Yahweh was outwitted by Tamar, giving birth to Zerah around 1840 BCE, such that his grandsons, Heman and Ethan would have been born prior to 1800 BCE. This would have made them 800 years old at the time the 88th and 89th Psalms were written. And second, in this case, Heman has a different and famous father and is, therefore, not an Ezrahite. There were, however, another Heman and Ethan who were Levites, although not necessarily sons of Korah. They were introduced in 1 Chronicles 15:16-19. Dowd asked the chiefs of the Levites to appoint their relatives as the singers, with instruments of music, harps, lyres and cymbals. So, the Levites appointed Heman, the son of Joel, and from his relatives, Asaph, the son of Berechiah, and from the sons of Merari, their relatives, Ethan, the son of Keshiah, and the singers, Heman, Asaph, and Ethan sounded aloud cymbals of bronze. Here, there is no affiliation with Ezraki, which is a significant omission. Moreover, the promotion from cymbal clangor to prophet would require considerable additional commentary, none of which exists. Therefore, the best informed and most rational conclusion would be to translate the meaning of Heman Ezraki such that, through careful analysis, we will find affirmation in this moniker that it was actually Dowd speaking to us, while explaining why he was willing to endure Matzah on behalf of his people. Since this message is emanating from Dowd's Nepesh, soul, we also need to be circumspect regarding how we express the pronoun associated with the Messiah's voice. 315 From our perspective, our soul is a thing, not a person, and is, therefore, referred to as it rather than he or she. But when the Nepesh belongs to God's Son, it seems disrespectful to discount the experience by referring to his Nepesh as it rather than more personably as he or him. From our frame of reference, things, do not have a voice, do not experience pain or have feelings, and its cannot share their thoughts, only their calibrations. These issues do not actually exist in Hebrew because hu is understood to be he and it. Further, without capitalization, there is no distinction between he and he. Before we begin, now that we have identified the voice, there are yet other riddles we must resolve. Why was the psalm scribed on behalf of the sons of Korah considering their horrendous miscalculation and subsequent incarceration in Sheol? Also, are we to translate as meaningful concepts transliterate as names and titles, Al-Makhaleth, of the defiled and diseased, La-Anna, the humiliated and cast down, and the Maskell, those serving as a means to contemplate the consequence of idols? These questions persist because, while the 88th Psalm is extant among the scrolls found in Qumran, the dedication is highly fragmented. Therefore, the Mizmowr's preamble is only available through the Masoretic text. And there we find that it was written to or for Beni Korach, not by them. This is important because they were bad boys and in serious need of a savior. But more on them in a moment. A song, journey through the lyrics of. A Mizmowr, a melodious composition with words, for, with regard to, toward, in the direction of, and on behalf of, the sons of Korah, Beni Korach, the children who are frosty and frozen, akin to ice, with chilly 316 dispositions whose heads are shaved and bald in the style of the religious. Mizmowr, Psalm 88 dedication in part. The first individual to bear the name Korach was the third son of Esau, a man God despised. He was likely the progenitor of Muhammad's Quraysh tribe, blacking his name all the more. The most infamous Korach, Korah, was the instigator of the Israelite uprising against Moses. For having led the insurrection, he and his co-conspirators went down in flames, the earth shaking beneath their feet, swallowing them en route to Shaul. So angered by this rebellion against his chosen liberator and prophet in the midst of the Yatzah, Exodus, Yahowah dispatched a plague to eliminate some 15,000 of those who promoted and aligned with the insurrection, as divine retribution for their rebellion. However, since these reprobates were long dead, they were not writing psalms. Although, since the Korach of Yatzah are akin to Haredi rabbis today, the lesson is an important one. In fact, their story is so interesting, it may be why the Mizmowr was introduced this way. On the positive side of their rather nasty legacy, the judge and prophet Samuel is listed as a descendant of Korah, and yet, he is the one who introduced us to Dowd. Moreover, since this is a song, a more mundane interpretation might suggest that the surviving descendants of Korach became singers, and they may have given voice to the lyrics Dowd inspired. As for the meaning behind the name, it is defined as frost, frozen, and cold. By implication, with ice being smooth, it also came to mean bald and spoke of those who, like pagan priests, shaved their heads. But it may be nothing more than descriptive of those who gave God a chilly reception. The dedication of the Mizmowr continues. 317-2, La, on behalf of, the Nazarch, everlasting and glorious director, Nazarch, the eternal leader and majestic guide, the enduring conductor, regarding being plagued, grievously wounded, and horribly sickened, Al-Makhaleth, upon the travail of suffering for having been defiled and diseased, from a compound of Ma, to question the who, what, where, why, when, and how of Selah, being sickened and weakened, injured and defiled, keeping in mind that the Korach were deliberately plagued by being humiliated and cast down, La Anna, suffering over their response, downcast, and depressed, also consistent with the Korach being sent to Shaul. Serving as a means to contemplate the consequence of idols, maskil, an instructive composition for the prudent and circumspect regarding religious symbols, from a compound of Ma, to question and consider Sakel, the means to derive insights which lead to understanding regarding maskite, religious images, also befitting the Korach of old, on behalf of, La, Haman, the one I have affirmed as trustworthy, Haman, the verified and reliable one of mine, the one who is consistent and enduring, from Ha, the, any, I, me, my, or mine, and a man, to be supported and confirmed, faithful and firm, Ha Ezraki, the native-born sacrificial lamb, Ha Ezraki, the fervently beloved, strong arm, and shepherd who sows the seeds which produce new life, from Ezrak, a native of the land, Ezroah, empowered shepherd, Zerah, sowing seeds and producing offspring, who Zarek, will rise, coming forth and appearing to shine, who is Shabab, beloved. Mizmowr, Psalm 88. Dedication. One of Dowd's most prevalent introductions to his Mizmowr begins with a play on words by using Nazarch. A song is composed for a Nazarch, conductor, and Yahowah, through whom they were written, is our Nazarch, eternal leader and glorious director. This is the first of three clues suggesting that the Mizmowr was composed by the Zarawah. 318. A student of the Torah, the king was well versed in the horrible example and episode of the Korach. And when we study what Yahowah said about them, we find Dowd explaining what he sought to resolve by fulfilling Matzah. As we will affirm in a moment, Yahowah Makhaleth grievously wounded the leadership of the Korach and then he plagued those allied with them, this disease killing some 15,000 during the Exodus. The followers would die while the perpetrators would suffer an eternity in hell. And in this way, they were Anna, cast down, suffering for their response to Moses. And so, for the maskil, circumspect, in their revolt we discover the consequence of being religious. Continuing to translate relevant and meaningful words rather than transliterate names that clearly do not belong, we hit pay dirt with Haman, the one I have affirmed as trustworthy Ha Ezraki, the native-born sacrificial lamb. Haman is the verified and reliable one of mine, the one who is consistent and enduring. It is from Ha, the, any, I, me, my, or mine, and a man, to be supported and confirmed, faithful and firm. It is addressing Dowd. As is Ha Ezraki, the fervently beloved, strong arm, and shepherd who sows the seeds which produce new life. It is from Ezrak, a native of the land, Ezroah, empowered shepherd, Zerah, sowing seeds producing offspring, and Zarek, who will rise, coming forth, appearing to shine. It is of the Zarawah. Since the backstory of Korach is so compelling, we'd be best served to consider it before we press forward into the Mizmowr addressing Dowd's experience while fulfilling Matzah. This seldom considered and yet intensely relevant episode during the Yatzah, Exodus begins with Numbers 15:28-31. There, Yahowah reveals. Therefore, Wah, the priest, Ha-Kohen, will provide temporary reconciliation by atonement, pardoning and 319 making amends, Kapha, for the soul, Al-Ha-Nipesh, who errs unintentionally, Ha-Shagag, when missing the way, Bar-Shatar, inadvertently having been misled, Shagaga, to the presence, La-Pana, of Yahowah, Yahowah, to pardon him, reconciling him, Kapha al-Hu. And he will be forgiven, Salak la-Hu. Bamidbar, Numbers 15:28. One Torah, Echad Torah, will exist, higher, for all of you, La-Atam, the native-born seed who rises, Ezra, among the children of Israel, Bar ben Yisrael, and for the foreigner, La-Hajer, who dwells as a guest, Hagra in their midst, Bar Torchem, for those who do, La-Hasar, something wrong unintentionally, Bar Shagaga. Bamidbar, Numbers 15:29. However, Wah, the soul, Ha-Nipesh, who, Asher, with a high hand or elevated influence, Bar Yodrum, from the native-born seed who rises, Minha Ezra, or among the foreigners, Wah Minha Jer, he reviles, slanders or blasphemes, Hugadaf, that which pertains to, Yahowah, Yahowah, that soul, Ha-Nipesh, will be cut off and severed, completely separating him from, Wakarat Ha-Humin, being part of her family, Kireb High. Bamidbar, Numbers 15:30. Because, ky, the word, Debar, of Yahowah, Yahowah, he has shown contempt, regarding as less important, Bazar, and has revoked and nullified, thwarted and frustrated, Wapara, the instructive conditions and benefits of his relationship agreement, Ethmitzwahu, for this, Ha-Hai, that soul, Ha-Nipesh, will be completely severed and forever separated, Karat. His guilt, A1 High, stays with him, Bar High? Bamidbar, Numbers 15:31. The reason I began our investigation of Korach at this point is fourfold. First, Yahowah shared this instruction 320 from his Torah immediately in advance of the chapters pertaining to the Korach rebellion, and that was reason enough because it suggests that they are related. Second, an essential distinction is being made relative to receiving a pardon or being condemned without hope of reconciliation. And the dividing line is intentional error versus inadvertent mistakes. Deliberately leading others astray results in complete and unrelenting separation, which would mean eternal incarceration in Sheol. Being led astray or inadvertently making a mistake is resolvable through the Torah. In Israel today, this would be the difference between being a rabbi or just being played for a fool by a rabbi. Third, there is only one Torah. This statement not only implicates Judaism, forestalling the myth of an oral Torah, but it also puts Orthodox, conservative, and Haredi Jews on notice that they are playing with fire. Not only are they guilty of claiming otherwise with the Talmud, but they have also made a religion out of this deliberate falsification of Yahowah's testimony. Fourth, when Yahowah speaks of those who have shown contempt for his word, preferring their arguments over divine inspiration, thereby nullifying the conditions and benefits of the covenant, it's obvious that he is condemning rabbinic Judaism. And for those promoting its blasphemous message, there is no salvation. Turns out that this was the issue with the Korach. He and his followers wanted to add their ideas to God's and not have to rely exclusively on Yahowah and Moses. This is the same argument the rabbis raise with their Talmud. They did not like where God was taking them, so they wanted to go their own way. Yahowah's response to sharing guidance between himself and leaders of the people, between his Torah and the notion of a Talmud, was not only to kill the leaders, sending them all to Sheol 321 vertical bar hell, but also to plague everyone who was allied or associated with this rebellion. So as if a sage advancing his belief, he took it upon himself to seize control, while Akak, Korach, frosty disposition and bald, Korach, the son, Ben, of Yitcher, my olive press, Yitcher, son, Ben, of Kahath, to preach, assemble together, and ally, Kahath, a son of Loi, uniters, Ben Loi, along with, Wah, Dathan, of the two wells, Dathan, and, Wah, Abiram, my father is exalted, Abiram, sons of Eliab, my father is God, Eliab, in addition to, Wah, On, wealthy and powerful, On, son of Pheleth, to run away and flee, Ben Pheleth. Sons of Reuben, a son appears, Beni Reuben. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:1. And, Wah, they rose up, Kum, before the presence, La Pana, of Moses, one who draws out, La Moses, along with individuals, Wah Ishim, from, Min, the children of Israel, people who contend with and strive against God, Beni Israel, 250, Shamesh Wamia, elevated and esteemed leaders, Nasi, of the community and socio-religious congregation, Eda, appointed to convey the official and approved message, Kari, of the designated meeting of witnesses, Mod, individuals with reputations and renown, Ishim Shem. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:2. The list of instigators and collaborators mimicking rabbis was held together by a single verb, lakek, which is typically translated as to grasp hold, seize control, and take for oneself. Its meaning is shaded in this case by lekek, which would have been written identically in the text and indicates that the co-conspirators were acting as if wise and learned men, like teachers, providing instructions, using persuasive words to wield power and change people's behavior and beliefs. In this case, lakek was written in the kal stem and imperfect conjugation, third-person masculine singular, revealing that this actually 322 occurred and that the intent of Korach was for his mutinous power grab to be permanent. These men's names reveal something about them. While rabbis want us to believe that Korach was shaved bald and deliberately disfigured at the command of Moses, his name actually means that he had a frosty disposition and was cold and calculating. His father's name suggests that Yitzhak believed that the olive press responsible for making anointing oil was his to control. And Yitzhak's father, Kahath, fancied himself a preacher providing sermons before large congregations of allied individuals. Korach, like Moses, was a descendant of Loi, Jacob's third of 6 sons with Leah. Sharing a similar lineage, Korach wrongly thought that he was equally qualified to assert his influence over Israel and then control the direction of the Exodus. The first of Korach's co-conspirators was Dathan, which means 2 wells, suggesting that the rebellious believed that there should be a secondary source of instructions, and the closest analogue would be the rabbinical insistence on an oral Torah conveying the perceptions of the sages. Abiram means my father is exalted and Eliab states that my father is God, revealing that the intent of the rebellion was to claim God's influence for themselves. Their quest was to control the children of Israel. On speaks of their motive, which was to become wealthy and powerful as a result of their insurrection. This remains so for rabbis today. The concluding names, that of their fathers, seem to suggest that Yahowah's advice was to Feleth, run away and flee, distancing oneself from the rebellion. Also, this 323 story is being told as a prelude to Reuben, the son appearing to resolve the hubris of religious corruption. As the story of their fleeting insurrection unfolds, we discover that the conspirators rose up before Moses, quite literally, getting in his panna, face. Korach did not understand why Yahowah chose Moses and not him. It is a lesson still lost on the religious. Moses, though no fault of his own, was brought up in Pharaoh's household. He was, therefore, rich and powerful. But rather than lord over others as a result of his station, Moses rejected the ways of Miriam, the crucibles of religious and political oppression. In an act of great character, he stood up against societal tyranny to spare an innocent soul. Then when the Hebrews he had risked it all to save copped an attitude not unlike Korach, and turned against their protector and advocate, he walked away from what had become his country and rejected its religion and politics. Knowing what made Miriam oppressive, and then rejecting it, is what made Moses the ideal liberator. And by contrast, Korach wanted to return to the prior state, where, evidently, he was a big shot among his fellow slaves. This would not be unlike rabbis claiming authority under Roman subjugation or in the shtetls. The second verb, to rise up, was also scribed in the kal imperfect, revealing that they intended to stand above and oppose Moses on an ongoing basis. They did not want to share esteem or authority but, instead, claim it for themselves. The number of rebels at 250 suggests that there may have been 20 from each of the 12 tribes, in addition to the 10 names which were presented in the preamble. And they perceived themselves as Nasi, which since it is from the verbal root nasa, means that they were full of themselves and had their noses in the air. They were as rabbis consider themselves today, exalted, elevated, and esteemed leaders. 324, like Israel, can convey positive or negative connotations. But in this context, the insurgents were allied within a socio-religious congregation and were, thus, in opposition to God. They had been Gari, appointed to convey the official and approved message of their community of believers. We very seldom see Mod used in a negative light, in that it serves as the secondary title of Yahowah's 7 annual Mikra. But in this case, the conspirators had their own agenda. They would be leading Israel down an entirely different path. It is tragic, but nonetheless true, that the rabbis have diligently maintained and would have those they have fooled believe, that all manner of Hebrew names save one can be correctly pronounced. Yahowah's statement says that they all had Shem, names and reputations, each of which was faithfully conveyed, except Yahowah's. Even though it was presented throughout this discussion, God's name is the only one the rabbis have sought to replace. Nothing has changed these past 3,400 years. They were gathered, assembled, and congregated, Wakahal, over and above, Al, Mos, and against Aharon, the alternative to an enlightened expression of free will, Al-Aharon. So, they said to them, Wa ma elhem, too much of you, too exalted are you, Rab la atom. Everyone, Shirl, of this community and socio-religious congregation, Ha-Ida, all of them, Shirlhem, are holy, sacred, and consecrated saints, Kadosh, and Yahowah, YYV7C7, is in their midst, Bartokhem. So why, on whose account, and what do you know, Wa Madua, for you to be lifted up, Nasa, over and above, Al, the congregation and community, Kahal, of Yahowah, Yahowah. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:3. 325. The focus of Korach's coup was to seize control and claim authority for themselves, just as the rabbis have done. And that is the reason there is 10 times more said in rabbinical literature than in the text revealed by God regarding the argument being used today to justify the rabbinical narratives in the Talmud. It is all to impose their spin on events because the plain reading of the inspired text indicates that the rabbis and Haredim will soon suffer the fate of Korach, and for the same reason. So, to circumvent this problem, the Talmud would have Jews believe that Korah was actually an exceedingly wealthy and learned man. And while that would be quite a feat for a slave, we aren't to allow logic to get in the way of a good story. So, according to the rabbis, Korach was right, and the real problem was Moses. He was acting as if he alone had been called and inspired by God and not all of them. According to the Talmud, Moses was evidently jealous that his rival had found the treasures of Joseph and had become one of the 2 richest men in the world, along with Haman, who is the mythical antagonist in the fanciful book of Esther. It is one of the rabbinical favorites, so they couldn't help themselves embellish one campfire story with another. Further, according to the Talmud, Korach was brilliant, which is the opposite of how Yahowah presents him or how his own words condemn him. But, hey, aren't the rabbis entitled to their opinions? Speaking of opinions, the cause of the revolt wasn't to exert authority over Yahowah's chosen prophet and liberator, or supplement his Torah, replacing God's words with their own, but, instead, it was over a meaningless slight. Elizaphan ben Uziel, the son of Korach's youngest son, was evidently nominated as a prince over the Kohathites by Moses, instead of Korach's eldest son, making this all about who has the authority to appoint leaders over the people. It was so rabbinic of them. 326 inches response, according to the Talmud, rather than directly opposing Moses, Korach made a game of it and played question and answer. In the rabbinic version, Korah outwitted Hashem's prophet, prevailing in their interpretation of the Talit, Teklit, and Mezuzah. Rabbinic arguments, I mean, Korach's perceptions, would take precedence, just as they do throughout the Talmud. Rejecting Moses' rebuttal, Korach dressed his faithful according to his rules and prepared a feast pursuant to his sensibilities. There would even be a Sanhedrin in the rabbinic story, predating its existence by 1,000 years. It was then claimed that Korach spoke for God rather than Moses. Concerned that this might be insufficient to exonerate the forefather of rabbinic Judaism, the Talmud would have us believe that the insurrection was actually caused by Korah's wife, and that she, playing the role of Eve, encouraged the rebellion. She allegedly claimed that Moses had proclaimed himself king and then that he had appointed his brother high priest, the very titles Jews would fight over during the Maccabean revolt 12 centuries hence. She then inferred that Moses had deliberately disfigured her husband, forcing him to shave his head to humiliate him out of jealousy. And it was Moses who was hateful and evil, not Korach. Then to add even more religiosity to the precursor of Judaism, the rabbis insist that Korah incited all of the people against Moses because it was impossible to endure the laws Moses had instituted. They even have him cite a clever parable, where a widow is robbed by Moses and his God to the point the widow and her daughters starve. Korach was so wise in the rabbinic variation, that he, not Moses, was a prophet. When he foresaw that Shamuel would be his descendant, he surmised that he would be vindicated. But not to worry, because unlike the presentation in the Torah, according to the rabbis, their 327 forefather was saved from God's judgment by Hannah's prayer. He ascended into paradise rather than descend into Sheol. Of course, that occurred because the rabbis do not believe Sheol exists. So enthralled were the religious Jews who wrote the Babylonian Talmud with their legend of Korah, they sold a recital of the story to Muhammad. Then 2,000 years after these events played out during the Exodus, Allah's messenger included a bastardized version of it in the Quran. Laughably it reads, "And the day when he will call them, and will say, where are my partners, whom you used to assert?" Quran Reward 2874, "And we shall take out from every nation a witness, and we shall say, bring your proof. Then they shall know that the truth is with Allah, and the lies which they invented will disappear from them." Quran Reward 2875. Indeed, Korah, was of Moses' people, but he tyrannized them. And we gave him of treasures whose keys would burden a band of strong men, Thereupon some of his people said to him, "Do not be glad. Indeed, Allah does not like those who are glad." Quran Reward 2876, but seek with that which Allah has offered you, the home of the hereafter. And forget not your portion of legal enjoyment in this world. Do good as Allah has done good to you. Desire not mischief in the land. Allah does not like mujrimin, disbelievers and polytheists. Quran Reward 2877. He said, I was granted all of this only because of some knowledge I possess. Did he not know that Allah had destroyed before him of generations who were stronger than him in might and greater in amount they had collected? But mujrimin, disbelievers and polytheists, about their sins, will not be asked. Quran Reward 2878. 328 So, he came out before his people in all his glamour. Those who desired the life of this world wished, oh, would that we had like what was given to Karun, Korah. He is truly the owner of great fortune. Quran Reward 2879. But those given knowledge said, Woe to you! Allah's reward is better for those who believe and do righteous deeds, but none will attain except the patient. Quran Reward 2880. And we caused the earth to swallow him up along with his home. And there was for him no company to help him against Allah, nor was he of those who defend themselves. Quran Reward 2881. And those who had craved his position the previous day began to say, know you not that it is Allah who extends provision or restricts it to whomsoever he pleases of his slaves? If not that Allah had conferred favor on us, he could have caused it to swallow us. Oh how the disbelievers do not succeed. Quran Reward 2882. Verily, he who has given you the Quran will surely bring you back to the mad place of return. Say, my Lord is aware of him who brings guidance, and he who is in manifest error. Quran Reward 2885. And you were not expecting that the book would be sent down to you, but it is a mercy from your Lord. So never be a supporter of the disbelievers. Quran Reward 2886. And let them not turn you away from the ayat, revelations of Allah after they have been sent down to you, and invite to your Lord, and be not of al-mushrikun, those who associate partners with Allah like polytheists and pagans. Quran Reward 2887. And invoke not any other ilah, God along with Allah, la ilaha illa huwa, none has the right to be worshipped. 329 But he. Everything will perish save his face. His is the decision, and to him you shall be returned. Quran Reward 2888. This is so obviously and childishly, deceptively and inappropriately, twisted from the Talmud interpretation of events some 2,000 years after the insurrection was confirmed in writing by Moses, that one would have to be a religious fool to believe that this came from Allah to Muhammad. If it were not for the fact that the rabbis were complicit in selling Talmud stories such as this to Muhammad, we'd have to credit Judaism with being less insane than Islam. From the Torah. When Moses listened and heard this, wa shama Moses, he collapsed, wa nafal, upon his appearance, al-panahu. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:4. Then he spoke, wa dabar, to Korak, al-Korak, and to his entire gang, his socio-religious community providing testimony, wa shirlidahu, to say, la ma, at daybreak tomorrow morning, Boka, Yahowah, Yahowah, will make known, Yada, who, according to the way of the relationship, Asher, is within for him, Lahu, and who is set apart, Wa Ethhakadosh, such that he will draw near, approach, and be present, Wa Karab, unto him, Elhu. Then regarding whom, for the benefit of the relationship, Wa Eth Asher, he chooses and prefers, Vasher, to be with him, Bahu, he will be present with him, Karab Elhu. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:5. Except for the collapsing, it was a reasonable response. And considering everything Moses had endured from these wayward malcontents, who could blame him? It is exasperating to read, so it had to be frustrating to endure. After all, this had been the guy who broke the first 330 set of tablets when he saw the golden calf his brother and accomplices had crafted. Moses' answer was simple enough. Let's have Yahowah decide. God has and will continue to make known who he prefers based upon who he has chosen to associate with and inspire. Then he addressed their power grab, saying that they should have been content being set apart to serve Israel through their ministry within the tabernacle. Moses said to Korak, Wa Amar Moshe el Korak, listen please, Shama Na, sons of Loi, Beni Loi. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:8, is it too trifling a matter for you, Mouth Min Atom, that the God of Yisrael, Ky Elohim Yisrael, has distinguished you, Badal Eth Atom, from the community of witnesses comprising Yisrael, Min Ida Yisrael, to allow you to approach, Karab Eth Atom, him, Elhu, to work, La Bad, by serving, Ethaboda, in the tabernacle, Mishkan, of Yahowah, Yahowah, and then standing before, Walamod La Pana, the assembly, ha-ida, to attend to and serve them, la shiratem. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:9. Or, what about the realization, ha-wah, that he has allowed you to approach, Karab eth-otter, along with all of your brethren, wa-eth shirlach-otter, the sons of Loi, Veni Loi, with you, eth-otter. And so, now are you seeking to acquire, wa-bakosh, the priesthood, kahuna, also, Yam. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:10. Therefore, la ken, you and all of your assembly, this entire socio-religious gang of yours, Ottawa Shirleader Otter, have chosen to band together, ha-yard, over and against, Yahowah, Yahowah. But Aharon, the alternative to an enlightened expression of free will, Aharon, why are you 331 grumbling over him, Mahu ky lu nal hu? Bamidbar, Numbers 16:11. This is the very thing that gave rise to Rabbinic Judaism. During the Maccabean uprisings, the Cohen priests became dissatisfied and wanted greater access to power and wealth. All the while, those who were not Loi wanted to claim the office and authority for themselves. In the end, this internal conflict between Jews and their God would lead rabbis to replace the Cohen and then break all of the rules applicable to them. Soon thereafter, with Moses and Yahowah brushed aside, they spoke for Hashem, the God of Judaism. To his credit, Moses realized that the Korach insurrection was in opposition to Yahowah. He saw them as Yasher would later present Ha-Satan, as aspiring to rise above Almighty God. But what Moses failed to understand was that the harbingers to the rabbis wanted three things: the perceived authorization to speak for God, the ability to compose their own Torah, and the right to hold the office of high priest. From there, Judaism would follow. There would be one authorized religion for Israel, and one group allowed to control and fleece the people by playing God. Korach didn't answer Moses' question because Yahowah's prophet had been right. Serving God was of no value to them, nor was serving his people because they were only interested in serving themselves. So, Korach attempted to turn the tables by posing the dumbest question ever attributed to a wise man pursuant to his liberator. Doesn't it matter, Harmaut, that you have taken us out, Kylar of a land flowing, Nin Erez Zub, with milk and honey, Shalab Wadabash, to kill us, having us die, La Monthanakyu, in the wilderness, Vaha Midbar, that, Ky, you must impose your rule over us, giving us no choice in the matter of leadership, Sarah al 332 Anakdu, while also claiming to be authorized to impose your dominion, Gamsarah. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:13. In addition, we are resentful, because you have not brought us, Lobo Anaknu, toward a land flowing, El Erezub, with milk and honey, Shalab Wadabash, nor given to us, Wa Nathan La Anaknu, an inheritance of property including open and cultivated fields and vineyards, Nashala Sade Wa Karem. Perhaps you have gouged out, Ha-Nakar, the eyes of these men so that they cannot see, Ha-In Ha-Ishim Ha-Hem, that we have not ascended or risen, Lo Allah. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:14. They were slaves, having no control over their lives. They had no possessions, no property, no rights, no say in what they did or whether they lived or died. Then, when they cried out, Yahowah and Moses came to liberate them, freeing every Hebrew from the crucibles of religious and political oppression. They had been given the Torah, and with it the freedom to choose life over death, being vindicated over condemnation, adoption versus estrangement. God led them, fed them, protected them, and enlightened them. And he would have already taken them from hell into the promised land had they not all been malcontents. There was only one reason they were still in the wilderness, and it was entirely because of them. The two instances of the verb sarah both speak of imposing one's will on others, giving them no say in the matter because they were shaped by the hitpail stem. In Korach's twisted mind, Moses was Pharaoh, and it was Pharaoh who had offered them paradise. Considering the condescending attitude of Israelites, and their propensity to puke in the faces of those willing to help them, is it any wonder Dowd realized that, if Moses and Yahowah couldn't garner their respect, 333 without tangibly providing salvation, how would he? Is there any wonder why we are reminded of this harbinger of Rabbinic Judaism as a prelude to the fulfillment of Matzah, the very mode the religious deny? While there are many stories like this, incriminating religiosity among Jews, this may be the juiciest. It continues. So, as a result, Moses, the one who draws out, while Moshe, was enraged, aroused to anger and burning with indignation, Cherah, to the greatest extent possible, Maud. And then he said to, Wa Ma El, Yahowah, Yahowah, pay no attention to, Alpana El, their offering, Minchahem. Not so much as one ass, Lo Cham or Ekad, have I accepted from them, Binhem Nasa. Further, Wah, I have not harmed, or done anything malicious or wrong, Lo Ra, toward a single one of them, Eth Ekad Minhem. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:15. As would be any informed, rational, or moral person. Properly directed, righteous indignation is a virtue. Moses had been nothing but generous to these donkeys and to all of Israel, and yet, they had consistently brayed in his face. Moreover, it's clear that, since they were being asses, Moses had not taken them. Then Yahowah, spoke, the bar, to Moses, El Moshe, and to Aharon, Wa El Aharon, to say, La Ma, Bamidbar, Numbers 16:20, you should choose to separate from, Vadal Min, the midst, talk, of this congregation, Ha-Eda Ha-Joth, so that I can be done with them, Wa Kala Ethem, in a comparative instant and forevermore, Ka-Riga. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:21. Given the opportunity to respond in kind, this would be my approach to those who promote Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They are wrong. Many have been 334 misled. And nothing is going to change to make any of this any better. Good riddance. With the gang gathered for the showdown, we hear from the man Yahowah chose and inspired to lead his flock. Moses said, Wa Ma Moshe, with this you will know with absolute certainty, Bar Joth Yada, that, indeed, Yahowah, has sent me, Shalach to engage and do, La'asar, each and every one of these things, accomplishing all of this work, Shel Ha-Maseh Ha-Aleh. It is for certain, this has not been from my judgment or per my inclinations, lo min lab any. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:28. Yahowah chose Moses to work with him during his mission to liberate the children of Israel. He would enlighten them with his Torah, collaborating on this as well. God had his reasons, most of which are clear to us now. And so, mankind can either accept Yahowah's choice of co-workers or live with the consequence of opposing his decision. But be aware, God's overwhelming preference is to work through men and women and not alone. So, if you want to be with him, I would strongly encourage you to support his choices, and if not, then don't be a fool and oppose them or him. If as with a normal death, the likes of these men all die, Imkarmoith Shel Ha-Adam Mogthaleh, or if they are held accountable only after being formally judged, Wapekta Pakad, as would be the case with any other individual, Shel Ha-Adam, for them, Alhem, it was not Yahowah, lo Yahowah, extending me, Shalach Eni. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:29. But if, Yahowah, conceives something unheralded and without precedent, bara, and he splits open, Patsa, the ground, Ha'adama, with it opening, Pehu, to swallow 335 them, Bala Ethem, and all that is associated with them, Shel Ashalahem, and they go down, Yarad, alive, Che, to Shaul, Hel, Shaul, then you will know, Yada, that, indeed, these individuals, Ha-Ish Ha-Le, have spurned and rejected, showing their contempt by having blasphemed, Nats, that which is associated with, Yahowah. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:30. This was a unique situation, where the insurrection had to be dealt with expediently. Had Yahowah allowed this power grab to continue unchallenged, he would have lost credibility, as would Moses and the Torah. It would have been a slippery slope to Judaism and Christianity, even before entering the Promised Land. There would have been no united Israel, no additional prophets, and no Dowd to serve as savior. It would all have been squandered in the wilderness without Yahowah sending an irrefutable message. And it came to pass, just as he finished the presentation of his thoughts, Ka-Kalahula Dabar, with all of these words, Shel Ha-Dabar Ha-Leh, then the ground, Ha-Arma, split apart, Bucka, under them, Asher Takathem. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:31. So, the earth, Ha-Eres, opened, Patak, her mouth, Peh, and swallowed them, Bala Ethem, along with their households, Bethem, including every one of the men, Shel Ha-Adam, who were associated with Korach, Ashelah Korach, even all of their possessions, Shel Ha-Rakosh. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:32. They were cast down, descending, Yarad, these individuals along with everything associated with them, Hem Shel Ashalahem, alive, Che, to Shaul, Hel, Shaul. Then the earth, Ha-Eres, closed over them, Kasa Alhem. They were destroyed, no longer 336 existing, Bad, within the midst, Mintalk, of the community, Ha-Kahal. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:33. As these men can attest, there is an enormous difference between dying and being sent to Shaul. With death, life is simply over. After the body dies, the soul dissipates, fading into oblivion. But with incarceration in Shaul, there is no end to life or anguish. It is eternal separation, and thus indicative of damnation. In this case, at least for us, it was worth the journey through the briar patch to hear Yahowah affirm that life never ends in Sheol. They were alive when cast down and would remain that way. This is why religion is such a foolish endeavor. It is the worst choice a person can make because it not only affects others detrimentally, separating them from God, it engenders the worst possible outcome. The bad boys of Korah did the unforgivable, and not only showed their contempt for Yahowah, but they also sought to elevate their words over God's chosen. And rather than empowering them as they had anticipated, their insurrection got them incarcerated. Such is the fate of every rabbi today. And of course, priests, pastors, and imams will join them, making hell a very religious place. Then all of Yisrael, Washel Yisrael, who were around them, Asher Sabibhem, fled at their loud and audible cry, La Kaulhem. For they said, Kyamar, otherwise, Pen, the earth will swallow us, Wala Aknuha Eres. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:34. Additionally, fire, Wa-esh, came out, Yatsar, from, Mineth, Yahowah, and consumed that which was associated with the 250 men, Wa-kaleth ha-chamesh wa-mi'im ish, approaching and present, Karab, with the incense blowing smoke, ha-katarat. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:35. 337 I prefer my trash incinerated too. It keeps the stench down, stops disease from spreading, and removes the hideous appearance. In this regard, there seems to be some indication that the final two witnesses will breathe fire on their opponents as did Yahowah on this day. Considering the timing and the deplorable nature of these people, it actually seems appealing. As for the onlookers this day, some 3,470 orbits of the earth around the sun ago, they appear to have been slow learners. And since we cannot call them retarded without offending someone, perhaps they were developmentally delayed and morally incapacitated. Or perhaps, they were auditioning to fill the role of progressives. But most everyone in the community, Washel Eda, of the children of Israel, Beni Yisrael, grumbled, Loon, during the next day Min Makarat, against Moses and against Aharon, Al-Moshe wa al-Aharon, saying, La Amar, you, yourselves killed, Atam the people of Yahowah, Etham Yahowah. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:41. This was the wrong place and time for stupid. There had been and would soon be ample opportunity to live miserable and unfulfilling lives apart from God's guidance. Consider Israel before and after Dowd or progressives and the Haredim today. However, once they left Miriam and until their arrival in the Promised Land, things would be different. For humanity to survive the rise of civilizations and the integration of totalitarian governments, deadly militaristic ambitions, caste system economics, and religious indoctrination and control, there would have to be a viable alternative. And that is what we are witnessing. This is a raw and unfiltered expression of one versus the other, demonstrating their incompatibility. 338 It all comes down to a very simple dividing line which was drawn this day in the desert sand. There is God's way and there is man's way, the way of life or death. And as a result of what was done here to set an example, people would be free to make an informed choice between them. The opportunity for a better life became known so that we would not all die. The distinction was made evident through the Torah and these people. For better or worse, God was committed to conveying his testimony through the children of Israel. And with Yahweh serving in this capacity, humankind was provided with a tangible example of what happens when we listen to Yahowah compared to what occurs when reality is inverted and he is rejected. If one were to discount the fact that Yahowah is God and that he is offering eternal life in heaven while magnifying every cooperative soul to an infinite extent, the reality is no one would exist without him. There would be no planet or life. But even apart from this obvious dynamic, these people were fourth-generation slaves toiling under a brutal regime. Their existence had been horrific and was becoming intolerable. So, there was only one upside for them. They had nothing to lose and everything to gain. So why mutiny? How about an example? You are the captain and owner of an exceptionally seaworthy vessel, and after surviving a storm, you come upon 1,000 shipwrecked people, gasping for life, surrounded by sharks. They are desperate, pushing one another into the sea to rise above them and, yet, you are their only hope for survival. Still, the scene playing out before your eyes is appalling. There is evidence that they brought this on themselves, that they have a propensity for mutiny, and that they show no respect for potential saviors. After all, your first mate has prior experience with them, and they humiliated him after he risked his life to save them. 339 So, do you rescue them or let them drown? And if delivering them from an agonizing death is what you would choose, do you establish some rules, realizing that without them, they will commandeer your ship, throw you and your crew into the sea, and then sail right back into the storm that caused their plight in the first place. Then, how do you respond when some of them retreat to prior conduct and, after accepting your conditions for rescue, renege, risking everyone's life? Do you toss them back into the sea so that many others might live? And wouldn't that be the most rational and compassionate course, since those who will now die as a result of their rebellion are no worse off than they were when you found them, and others have been saved? Perhaps even, as a result of your being true to your word, the remaining survivors will become more receptive to listening to ongoing instructions. I realize that there have been some notable and wonderful exceptions, but overall, most people are unable to process the nature of this situation. These folks were the most fortunate people on the planet, and they were acting as if being worked to death as slaves was more desirable than being in Yahweh's company. To say that they were irascible, irrational, and unappreciative would be too kind. While the naysayers persisted in beguiling the people to revolt against their savior, there could be no forward progress. If God had taken them into the land of Canaan still harboring this mindset, and dropped them off, those who were not exterminated or enslaved, would have been bred out of existence like any other vagabond tribe in the crosshairs of ruthless civilizations. Not only were the Israelites unprepared to live with God, but they were also barely capable of surviving as slaves, and that was the only life they knew. Without Yahweh's ongoing support, they would be mincemeat. 340 With this assessment of the situation, what were Yahweh's options? He was off the hook because he had honored his promise to Abraham and withdrawn his descendants from slavery in Mizraim. He had done for them what humankind has craved over the centuries by introducing himself and proving his existence while explaining theirs. In spite of their reprehensible attitude, he had given them every opportunity for a better life. And yet, they wanted no part of it. They wanted to travel down a different path, so God opened the door for them. But since they were 99% malcontents, why not just release the remnant into the desert and walk away, even knowing that there would have been no chance for their survival? Fortunately, that did not happen, because had it occurred, we would never have heard of Moses or had access to the Torah. Yahowah would be unknown, as would be the Berith and Mikra. Death would be the end of life for everyone. Civilizations, nations, and their institutions would continue to be as savage as Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Carthage, Greece, Rome, Roman Catholicism, Islam, Nazism, and communism, but with no escape, no hope of a better life. As we know, Yahowah did not give up on them. Instead, on this day, he chose to set an example, drawing a line in the sand he expected us to notice. So, it came to exist, higher, as they assembled as a gang, forming a crowd, Bar-Ha-Eda, rising over and against Moses and in opposition to Aharon, Al-Moshe was Al-Aharon, they turned toward, Wapana-El, the tent of appointed meetings regarding the restoring testimony, and eternal witness, Ohel Mode. Then behold, Wahine, a cloud, Ha-Anan, concealed and covered it, Kasahu. And he appeared and was seen, Wa-Ra, the rewarding and 341 respectable presence, Karbowed, of Yahowah. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:42. Moses and Aharon, Wa-Moshe Wa-Aharon came, to the front, Elpanah, of the tent of appointed meetings regarding the restoring testimony, and eternal witness, Ohel Mode. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:43, and Yahowah, spoke, Debar, to Moses, El-Moshe, saying, Lama, Bamidbar, Numbers 16:44, be exalted, gaining status and honor by moving away and separating yourself, Ramam, from the midst of this assembly, Mentor Ka-Eda Ha-Joth, because I am going to be finished with them, Wa-Kala Ethem, in a moment, Ka-Riga. And so, they collapsed, Wa-Nafel, in their presence, Al-Panahem. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:45. God was finished with some so that he could continue with others. A few were set apart from him so that many might be set apart unto him. Those seeking power for themselves, striving to set the agenda for the people by obscuring Yahweh's intent, met their maker. And as a lesson to us, they were found defective. With their operating system corrupted beyond repair, and with them providing a conflicting message, they were discarded. Unfortunately, however, that was insufficient because false prophets are preferred over those who speak for God. Their religious ideas spread like a plague, infecting many others. So Moses sought to stop the spread of the virus from contaminating the people. For many, it was too late, but not for all. Moses said to Aharon, Wa-Moshe Amar El Aharon, grasp hold of the censer, Lakek Eth Ha-Maktar, and offer to provide upon it, Wa-Nathan El-Hai, fire from on the altar, Eshmin El-Ha-My speech. Add 342 some incense Wa-Sim Katorith, and quickly walk, Wa-Holok Mahira, toward the assembly, El-Ha-Eda, and offer to provide reconciliation, Wa-Kafa, for them, Al-Hem. Surely, KY, the righteous indignation and enormous frustration, Ha-Kazif, is coming forth, Yatsa, from the presence of Yahweh, Min La Pana Yahowah. The plague, Na-Negef, will be defiling, desecrating, and dishonorable, such that those who are infected will become common, Chal. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:46. It is hard to know what Moses was thinking or how he expected a censer, some fire and smoke to make a difference. The problem he was trying to solve could only be resolved by having the people make better choices. So, a reading of the Torah would have been more effective than fumigating. To his credit, Moses realized that the pathogen affecting the people was virulent, and it was spread mouth to ear, infecting inadequately used brains and unhealthy souls. To mitigate the disease, he would have to rapidly change the ongoing discussion from wrong to right. He also recognized that time was not his ally. Given the opportunity, religion becomes so pervasive that it appears normal, and people begin to equate its popularity and longevity with believability. Yahweh is indignant when it comes to the claims which underlie religions like Judaism and Christianity. Any attempt to supersede his guidance is met with righteous indignation, and this is largely because religions move the faithful in the wrong direction, from set apart to common, vindicated to defiled, purified to polluted. Being popular is the plague of death. Aharon, Waharon, grasped hold of it, Lakek, in the manner, Kar Asher, Moses had stated 343 to Bar Moshe. And he ran, Waruz, into the midst, El Talk, of the crowd, Ha-Kahal. But behold, Wahine, the plague, Ha-Negef, had already begun profaning and desecrating, defiling and polluting, Chal, within the people, Baha'am. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:47. The plague which became Christianity, and then Judaism, had already begun. And word by corrupt word, it was transforming God's people into ordinary humans. The more they rebelled, the more common they became. This pandemic is the deadliest ever devised and also the most pervasive. And destroys from within, devouring the souls of entire communities, countries, and civilizations. Yahweh has provided a means to perfection and reconciliation, Matzah and Kippurim. And while incense isn't the answer, it may have distracted those who were not yet infected such that they could be vaccinated by the Torah. The message God is delivering is that the only way to thwart the paralyzing and destructive effects of religion is to reconcile one's relationship with Him through the Berith, Mikra, and Torah. The children of Israel had pulled yet another stunt and upset God, and now it was time to make amends. And the catalyst for that is understanding, making the connections between the events of this day to differentiate between the living and dead, those headed to Shamaim rather than Shaul. He offered the incense, Wa Nathaneth ha-Katarat, trying to reconcile and make amends, Wa Kafa, for the people, Al-Ha-Am. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:48, he took a stand, Wa Almod, helping facilitate the connections needed to appreciate the difference between, Bayan, the dying who were perishing, ceasing 344 to exist, Moph, and that which pertains to comprehending the nature of, Bayan, the living, Ha-Chaim. And so, Wa, the deadly, destructive, and virulent plague, Ha-Mejefa, was restrained, as are. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:49. There were, Wa-Haya, 14,700, Abba Asar Elif Wa-Sheba, who died, Ha-Moph, in the pandemic, Ha-Mejefa. Bamidbar, Numbers 16:50. The crisis had taken its toll. There was yet another lesson for us to heed. Religions like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam which misappropriate Yahweh's testimony to create independent religious scriptures are deadly. Yahweh is supportive of those He has chosen and intolerant of those who would supplant them. Now, more than ever, a remedy was needed to avert the consequence of having been inadvertently and temporarily led astray. So, enter Dowd, stage right. Yahweh, Yahowah, our Eloah, God has directed in His Torah, teaching regarding His Hayeh, existence and our Shalom, restoration, is the God, Elohim, of my salvation, Yahshua Eni, of my liberation and deliverance, my freedom and victory, even of my ability to save. Today, Yahweh, I have called out in considerable pain, Tsaak, I have offered a summons during a period of distress, conveying a proclamation to come together, Cal perfect first person singular, during the darkness, Baha Layla, publicly and openly to you as your counterpart, Nejdota, in your presence, conspicuously exposing you while confessing, avowing, and making you known in plain sight. Mizmowr, Song, Psalm 88:1. 345. This opens with one of the Messiah's favorite lines. Our Savior credits His Savior just as our Shepherd acknowledged His Shepherd. Furthermore, the initial verb, Tsaak was scribed in the first person singular without reference to gender. Throughout the Mizmowr this has been Dowd's subtle and accurate way of revealing that, while fulfilling Chag Matzah, the voice is that of his Nipesh, soul. This is because, while the Son of God is a man, his Nipesh, like ours, is feminine in Hebrew. Since there were more than a dozen words, many far more common, the Messiah could have chosen in place of Tsaak to say that his consciousness was crying or calling out. I turned to the Torah to ascertain why it was selected, and what I found was heartbreaking. The first time Tsaak appears in the Torah, Yahowah is addressing Cain after he murdered Abel, and says, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is Tsaak, crying out to me from the earth." Bersith, Genesis 4:10. It is the first recorded instance of a man killing another, of a brother in conflict with God rebelling by attacking a sibling whose relationship with Yahowah was as intended. In this way, the agonizing cry of Tsaak foreshadows what occurred during the Korach uprising against Moses. Tsaak next appears as an anguished cry in Bersith 27:34, to convey Esau's anguish when he realized that his birthright had been taken from him because his mother and brother had schemed against him. And like the previous episode, Tsaak was used to convey what occurs when brothers turn against one another. It is symbolic of the infighting within Israel which would tear the people apart and away from Yahowah. It is then used among the Miraim in Bersith 41:55, but not before we find echoes of sibling rivalries and past 346 troubles among Israelites. In 41:51 we read, Yahweh named his firstborn Manasseh because God has caused me to forget all of my troubles regarding my father's household. 4 statements later, Tsaak is used to convey a distressed cry for help during the predicted famine, when the people sought lechem, bread so that they might live. So even here, we find a foreshadowing of Dowd's fulfillment of Matzah on behalf of our survival. Thereafter, Tsaak is presented in conjunction with Moses asking Pharaoh on behalf of Yahowah to let my people go so that they may celebrate a feast with me in the wilderness, which serves as another reference to Matzah. Pharaoh is then recorded playing the role of a rabbi, saying, "Who is Yahowah that I should listen to his voice to let Israel go? I do not know Yahowah." In response to the request, Thutmose instructed his taskmasters to increase the burdensome labors imposed upon the Hebrew slaves by withholding the straw required for bricks to hold together, such that their efforts would be futile. Then he mocked the Israelites saying that they could Tsaak, cry out in agony about wanting to go with their God to observe the sacrifice. Shemoth 5:1-8. Severe beatings followed as the human tyrant sought to humiliate, torment, and abuse his slaves. The next 3 appearances of Tsaak are gut-wrenching. In context, the first 2 are used to convey. Then as Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel looked and realized that the Miraim were marching after them. They became very frightened. So, the children of Israel Tsaak, cried out in distress to Yahowah. Shemoth 14:10. Then they said to Moses, "Is this because there were no graves in Miraim that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you dealt with us this way, bringing us out of the crucibles of human oppression?" Shemoth 14:11, "Is this not the message we conveyed to you in Miraim, 347 saying, Leave us alone so that we may serve the Egyptians? Because it would have been better for us to be slaves to the tyrants of religious and political oppression than to die in the wilderness." Shemoth, Exodus 14:12. Right from the onset, the Israelite slaves rejected their savior, not once, but twice, with Moses and then Yahowah. They would rather have been slaves to the tyrants and taskmasters of political and religious oppression. They preferred man's way, no matter how debilitating and depressing, to God's way, no matter how liberating and enriching. This episode is, therefore, reminiscent of how the Hebrews rejected and then threatened Moses after he had saved one of their brothers from being beaten to death by a slave driver. And this exchange is prophetic of the Korach revolt. After promising that Yahowah would save them if they would shut up and stop complaining, then Yahowah said to Moses, "Why are you Tsaak, summoning me, crying out to me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward." Shemoth 14:15. In a word, Dowd led the observant among us to explore the backstory in the Torah and during the Exodus, so that we might better understand not only what he sought to resolve by fulfilling Matzah but, also, the reason he was motivated to make this sacrifice. Ever the brilliant orator, he had more to say. So, the people grumbled, "What will we drink?" So, he Tsaak, cried out to summon Yahowah. Shemoth 15:24-25. After showing Moses how to sweeten the embittered waters, Yah shared the moral of the story. If you will prioritize listening to the voice of Yahowah, your God, and engaged based upon what is right in his sight, listen to the conditions of his relationship agreement, and observe his instructions, I 348 will not plague you with any of the diseases with which I afflicted the religious and political oppressors, for I, Yahowah, am your healer. Shemoth 15:26. With the memory of a distracted gnat, and the attitude of a disgruntled boar, The people quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." So, Moses responded, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you constantly test Yahowah?" So, the people continued to complain against Moses and said, "Why, now, have you brought us up from Miriam, to kill us and our children?" So Moses cried out in frustration to summon Yahowah, saying, "What should I do regarding these people? They are about to stone me." Shemoth 17:2-4. Similarly, Korach and company challenged Moses and disregarded all Yahowah had done for them during the insurrection reflected in the dedication of the 88th Mizmowr. And keep in mind, the Shemoth 17 episode was mild compared to the complete meltdown among the Israelites at the waters of Meribah, as told in Bamidbar, Numbers 20. Not surprisingly, we find Tsaak deployed once again at the conclusion of the ultimate temper tantrum. Therefore, I strongly suspect that there is a lesson in Tsaak that Dowd wanted us to process when he said, "Yahowah, Yahowah, is the God, Elohim, of my salvation, Yeshua Eni. Today, Yahweh, I have called out in considerable pain, offering a summons during a period of duress, urging unity, Tsaak, during the darkness, Baha Layla, publicly and openly to you as your counterpart to conspicuously make you known, Nej daughter." Mizmowr 88-1. 349. Indeed, Dowd is Yahowah's counterpart, his son. And at this moment we find the Zarawah addressing his father during the day he fulfilled Pesach and again during the long night of Matzah. His goal is not only to make his fulfillment of Chag Matzah as nejd, conspicuous as possible by exposing what he would achieve, but also to draw attention to his father so that he would be known to us. And in this regard, the root of Nagid means, to announce a verdict and to expound on a message, publishing important information. And that is the intent of this Mizmowr. Moreover, a Nagid is a messenger. Nejd's relation to Nagar speaks of radiating light, shining brightly. It also reveals that enlightenment provides knowledge enabling us to respond. These things are all consistent with Yahowah's Torah, teaching and Dowd's commitment to honoring its promises. Contrary to most translations, this declaration does not read "I have cried out day and night." Yam precedes the verb and the layla follows it with a preposition but not a conjunction. Therefore, we can surmise that Dowd was appealing to his father during Pesach, which transpired during the day in recognition that his soul would soon enter the darkness of Sheol. Affirming the transitory aspect of this statement, Tsaak was conveyed in the perfect conjugation, which indicates that this would transpire over a finite period of time. My commitment to be distinct by intervening, Tafila Eni, my distinguishing resolve to mediate, and to be set apart, from Pala, to be unique, distinguished, and set apart, Strong's H 6395, and Palal, to intervene and mediate, Strong's H 6419, to come by choice and pursue the harvest, Bo, to arrive, returning to cause this to occur, Kal imperfect third person feminine singular jussive, before your appearance, La Panaota. 350 So, it is your will to incline, Nata, it is your desire to extend, hyphal imperative second person masculine singular, your ear, Zanota, your capacity to hear, my request and song, La Reina Eni, my triumphant proclamation. Mizmowr, Song, Psalm 88:2. When these words are correctly conveyed and the influence of the jussive and imperative moods are considered, the result is particularly insightful. After telling us that Yahowah is the God of his salvation, and that he will endure the duress and darkness of Pesach and Matzah, Dowd reveals that this tafila, commitment to intervene on behalf of his people, was his choice in pursuit of the bow, harvest pursuant to his return. But not only was the Messiah's appearance at Chag Matzah his decision, as conveyed through the jussive mood, Yahowah was Nata Erzan, pleased to hear what his son had decided. This realization that they were of like mind, wanting the same thing, was brought to us by the imperative mood. And so, we have been afforded a wonderful insight into this song's intent. The fulfillment of Chag Matzah would be the greatest example of intercession the world would ever know. By deploying Dowd's Nipesh, soul to redeem his children, carrying their guilt into Sheol, the people were prepared for the harvest and able to live in God's presence. The message being conveyed isn't mournful, even apprehensive, but, instead, joyful, because the Zarawah is assured that his intervention will enable the most wonderful of all results, the perfection and reconciliation of Yahowah's covenant family. And that's at all or considering how belligerent they have been toward God in the past. The Messiah is, therefore, singing the Mizmowr to his father, knowing that he is inclined to listen and that he 351 wants his son to intervene in this manner. There would be, as La Reina affirms, legitimate reasons to sing this song. Further, by reminding us of the horrible experience with Korach at the beginning of the song, and then by encouraging us to use Tsaak to travel back in time and witness some of the worst moments between God and his people, and in particular, to consider their aggressive denouncements of Moses, Dowd is explaining why he must suffer in this way. Since Moses failed to earn their respect, and they constantly revolted against him, to successfully lead Israel through eternity would require something exceptionally special, and it does not get more tafila, distinguishing than volunteering to fulfill matzah and bikurim. In this regard, please take note that the verbal root of tafila, pala, means to be set apart, to be separate and distinct, exceptional and unique. Also, recognizing that tafila is strongly influenced by palal, Dowd's distinction would come through intervention and intercession. And that is what Pesach and Matzah would require of the sacrificial victim. And this is how it happened. Dowd's Nipesh, soul, was laden with his people's guilt so that he could carry it to Shaul during Matzah, and then dispose of this plague on Yisrael. Indeed, as if branded, KY, surely now, my soul, Nipesh Eni, my consciousness, is currently overwhelmed, filled to capacity at the moment, Saba, she, because his Nipesh is feminine, will have satisfied and fulfilled every need, providing more than enough, Cal perfect third person feminine singular, with, bar, that which is wrong, the malevolence of fellow countrymen, and the injurious malignancy of my associates, Ra, that which is disagreeable and distressful, evil and invalid. 352 Incorrect and troublesome among my citizenry's loud claims of authority and rule. As such, Wa, therefore, my life, Shem Eni, is being extended toward and will imminently be afflicted and plagued by, La Naga, will reach and be diminished, be stricken and inflicted by, Hyphil perfect, it would have a transformative effect through this contact for a limited duration, Shal, the place of separation known as hell and the founder of Christianity known as Paul. Mizmowr, Song, Psalm 88:3. The firstborn Son of God is explaining how he is fulfilling Chag Matzah, doing so nearly a millennium in advance of his soul's sojourn into hell. The errant thinking, invalid statements, and wrongdoing of every covenant member was placed upon Dowd's Nipesh, soul, so that, once removed from us, it could be deposited in Shaul never to be seen again. In this way, his people were perfected and, therefore, exonerated. The scope of the undertaking is conveyed through the verb Saba, which reveals that the burden-carrying capacity of Dowd's soul was stretched to the limit. He fulfilled the mission by satisfying his father's promise to provide redemption. And in so doing, he became our Savior. The guilt which was taken from us was the result of having been wrong about God and the path to Him. And by taking it to Shaul, not only was our debt paid in full. Further, without any evidence to convict us, all charges were dismissed. While many souls have been sent to Shaul, only one carried the guilt of those he was saving with him. And once our debt was paid, Dowd's soul was unique among men because it was released from hell. It is relevant in this case to know that Ra has many meanings. It speaks of the shepherd who cared enough for 353 his flock that he rescued his sheep at great personal cost. Ra speaks of associates and fellow citizens, letting us know who had been guilty and were now exonerated. And especially fitting in this situation, Ra describes that which is errant and wrong, displeasing and troublesome, and there was plenty of that going around. Our Messiah would forever separate us from our prior political and religious malfeasance. Once fully laden with everything the covenant's children have done and will ever do that was inappropriate, he carried it away into the perpetual darkness of a single dimension where it could not be found or seen again. The fungus of yeast which had permeated our souls was removed by Dowd's soul. This is the mandate of Matzah, the way the Zaroway intervened to perfect the covenant family. While Shaul is thought to be the realm of the dead, it is actually a prison designed to incarcerate those whose souls remain alive, which is why it is hell. Considered a void, it is a one-dimensional construct, infinite only in time. It can be accurately defined as the lightless place of abandonment and no return, which is why I compare it to a black hole. To better understand Shaul, be aware that it is written identically to Shaul, the name of the king the people had chosen over Yahowah. King Saul was Dowd's nemesis, a political leader who was rejected by Yahowah for modifying the Torah. It is also the name of the most foul-mouthed religious leader who ever lived, the Shaul known to Christians as Paul. Should you be curious as to how one evil and egotistical, demon-possessed and psychotic man warned us of the other, read Questioning Paul. Looking at the most similar words, Sham denotes waste and ruin, destruction and desolation from corruption. Sham is a depressed pit from which 354 nothing escapes, a lifeless place where corrupt souls are destroyed. Whereas Shaun represents an uproarious place of rebellion, confusion, and chaos where people cry in disorderly agitation. The root of Shaul is shal, denoting to ask, inquire, and to question, and speaks of finding out, even of borrowing and begging. Therefore, souls upon their arrival in Shaul will question what they are doing there, and upon finding out, they will beg for permission to leave. And interestingly, Shal is also the divorcee of a foreign wife. Even though it appears over 400 times in the Tanakh between Shaul, hell and Saul, there are rabbis named Saul, and hell is a place they claim does not exist. But God is quite clear, Sheol is a place of utter darkness, totally deprived of light. It is a prison from which nothing escapes. It is a depression, a place of lesser dimensions, and is thus akin to a pit. I am counted, Chashab, I am temporarily reckoned and considered, Nephil perfect, among him, with those being cast down into Yarad, those descending, being brought down for having subjugated others or prostrated themselves to, Kal participle, the prison of lesser dimensions, or, the pit of shame for the corrupt and the dungeon of disappointment which is shown to exist and clearly explained. I exist for the moment, higher, I am, Kal perfect, akin to, Ka, similar to, a human being, albeit a strong and valiant man willing to fight for what is right, Geber, a powerful individual among mortal men, whose strength has been taken away, Ein Yal, without vigor, strength, ability, or any support. Mizmowr, Song, Psalm 88:4. Dowd was decidedly human, a Geber of the highest standing. And as the soul of this valiant man descended into 355 Sheol burdened with our guilt, he suffered instead of us. His Nepesh served as a ransom to redeem those in accord with the covenant's conditions. It was a most worthy battle fought by a formidable warrior. Yarad helps to explain the descent into lesser dimensions, whereas the souls of mortal men and women are reduced from 3 to 1 measurement, essentially a singularity. Yarad also means to be abandoned, which is what will happen to those who have subjugated others and forced them to prostrate themselves. As such, Sheol will be a religious experience. A bore is a pit serving as a confining prison or depressed dungeon. It is lightless and escape-proof. Gerber is a relatively positive depiction, addressing a strong and valiant individual, someone we would consider competent and capable. However, as the prophecy portends, Dowd's soul was Ein Yal, deprived of his strength. Such is the case with all who descend into Sheol. It is interesting to note that Yal is textually identical to, and is based upon, Ale, the lamb who served as the Pesach Ale. And now since it is negated, the physical body the Zarahua had used to fulfill Passover was now gone. Only his Nepesh remained to enter Sheol with our guilt. Separated, Chophashi, abandoned and isolated, sent off and away, unto death, Bahamoth, during the departure of the soul from the body, like, Ka, similar to, those who are common and irresponsible, defiled by being reprehensible, Chol, those considered unclean and reprehensible, those who have been pierced, wounded, and subsequently died, lying down in their graves, Shakab Keba, placed in a horizontal position inside of tombs as if asleep, devoid of biological life, who relationally, Asher. By way of linkage and connection, you remember them, Zarkahu, you recall and 356 recollect them, bringing them to mind, no more, lo ode, ever again. For they, Wahem, are cut off and excluded, Gazar, severed, ceasing to exist, separated and divided, actually exterminated, from, men, out of and away from, your hand and influence, Yod Otter. Mizmowr, Song, Psalm 88:5. As this statement affirms, Sheol, hell is the place of separation, of estrangement from God and his people. It is an eternal, and lightless prison. And since it is designed to incarcerate the most reprehensible and common, it will be filled with those who have led mankind's most popular institutions, which are almost universally religious. While the bodies of religious leaders will rot in their graves, their souls will endure in the darkness. Cut off and separated from the God they claimed to serve, those who sought fame and fortune will have neither. This also reveals that those who don't know Yahowah are not known by him. Those who die plagued by religion cease to exist, while those who have used it to harm his people are dispatched to the place of separation, Sheol. And rest assured, gone is forgotten, as the living will not be grieved by their loss. You have put me, Shaitheni, you have actually placed me for a time, appointing and determining for me, Kal perfect, in the lowest part of, Bartakti, the depths or least dimensional aspect of, the prison, Bor, the pit of shame for the corrupt and the dungeon of disappointment which is shown to exist and clearly explained, from Bor, to make obvious and prove, in the darkest place, Bar Maksak, in the total absence of light, in the abyss of the deep, Bar Matzola, by being drawn in, sinking. Mizmowr, Song, Psalm 88:6. 357. God was not going to cut corners or cheat, even for his beloved son. Burdened with our guilt, entering Sheol, Dowd would have been seen as the lowest of the low. The Messiah's consciousness was escorted from Yerushalayim to Sheol as Passover became unyeasted bread. And over the next 24 hours, he would sink toward the center of the black hole. This prison is exceptionally dark, because it is devoid of Yahowah's light. Not only does this mean that there are no fires in hell, there is nothing to burn and nothing to see. Before me and around me, Aleni, your displeasure and antagonism, Kema Otter, your righteous indignation, is upheld and sustained, Samak, is steadfast and unrelenting. And, Wah, With your every shattering and crushing wave, Shirl Mishbar Otter, your most extreme means to apply pressure and cripple as a result of the breach, you have responded by afflicting. Anna, you have provided the answer. Pause now and reflect upon this, weighing in the balance what has been acquired and rejected. Selah, recognize what has been purchased, bought and paid for, and now possessed as a result of knowing what to repudiate. Mizmowr, Song, Psalm 88:7. As we discovered when we journeyed through the Torah in pursuit of insights, Yahowah finds those who deliberately antagonize him to be reprehensible, and in every case, his righteous indignation was sustained. Therefore, since for the moment, Dowd was slathered with our guilt, he would have experienced God's disdain for the offenses he was removing. As for these crushing waves, we have recently discovered that the gravity which makes a black hole 358 menacing and inescapable travels in waves. There could be a correlation between this powerful effect which warps time, and the answer God was providing. Anna is among Hebrew's most underappreciated terms. Its primary meaning shapes our understanding of the annual invitations to meet, where we are encouraged to reply. Moreover, the mode are God's answer to what plagues us. Anna's less often used negative connotations were also at play during the fulfillment of Chag Matzah. God allowed Dowd's soul to be afflicted so that our souls could be perfected. That is his response to resolve our guilt. And it is the remedy Dowd provided for those who reply in the affirmative. When engrossed in Dowd's Mizmowr, we are often confronted by Selah, which is typically translated as pause now and reflect upon this. However, when we do, we discover that Selah also encourages us to weigh what we have read in the balance so that we appreciate what has been acquired and rejected. When we Selah the events of Matzah, we come to recognize what has been purchased at great cost and what we can possess of great value as a result of knowing what influences to repudiate. This next statement opens with two verbs. Rachik speaks of distancing, of severing associations, and of avoidance through the projection or extension of something to an alien place. It is consistent with our conclusion that Dowd's presence was projected through his Nepesh, consciousness into Shaul, the place of separation. The second verb, Yada, means to know, to be familiar, to be made aware, and to perceive, as well as to observe, realize, acknowledge, and understand. As such, Yada reveals that Dowd was aware of everything that was happening to his Nepesh. 359 The subject of Rachik is second-person masculine singular which, in this case, is Yahowah. The object of Yada is any, me, thereby identifying the Nepesh who is also the speaker as Dowd. The sentence concludes with a preposition and pronoun, min any, meaning from me. I am sharing this prior to the translation because Yahowah could be using these words to express many potential points at this pivotal moment in history. With Rachik scribed in the Hyphal perfect, God initiated the process which caused Dowd's Nepesh to serve as a secondary subject as he was sent far away, temporarily extended to this alien place. His soul was removed, severed from whence he had come, separated and distanced, all of which is conveyed by Rachik. However, just as there is no object for Rachik, there is no subject delineated with Yada, which requires us to consider these verbs together to derive a complete thought. From Dowd's perspective, he has been forgotten, and for this, he is frustrated. For a while, you are far away, distant and aloof, so the relationship with you is temporarily severed. Rachik, you are distant and completely separated. Hyphal perfect second person masculine singular, as is my awareness and familiarity. Yada any, my understanding. From my perspective, min any, you have placed upon me. Seeth any, you have constituted to be set on me. Kal perfect second person masculine singular, their repulsive religious abominations. Towrah lahem, their appalling and detestable nature. But for the moment, being restrained, Kala, due to this imprisonment there is silence. I cannot give expression to my frustration. Lo yatsa, I am not free to bring this out and express myself. Mizmowr, Song, Psalm 88:8. 360 For Dowd, this was hell. He had enjoyed his father's company, and now they were separated. In Shaul, even Dowd's memory was fading as he tried to picture Yahowah's smiling face and last loving embrace. It all seemed so very far away during Matzah. What he could remember was that God had placed his people's Towrah, repulsive religious abominations upon him. He had been slimed. And as much as he wanted to give voice to the horror of it all, he was restrained. He was not free, at least at this moment, to share how much he hated that which he had taken into hell. It was exceedingly frustrating. It is also very sad. The madness of the religious mindset, the poison of politics, the sadistic nature of conspiracy, the very things God despises, the Messiah endured so that he could exonerate us. The Son was burdened with every abominable and repulsive thing ever thought and perpetrated by his people. It boggles the mind. Just as this prophecy portends, and as the Mikra of Matzah promises, the corruptive fungus of religion permeating our souls was removed, carried away by the firstborn's Nepesh and discarded in Shaul. And while the thought of God's beloved Son ransoming us from our failures by serving our sentence is the highest order of love, it's the witness which follows that is haunting. In the imperfect conjugation, Dowd's consciousness suffered for an indeterminate amount of time. While it was finite from our perspective here on Earth, and no more than 24 hours confined within the gravitational pull of an enormous black hole, time would have slowed to the point that it may have seemed like forever. While we cannot measure time within the ergosphere of a black hole, at 1.00005 Schwarzschild radius away and nearing the event horizon, because of the redshift, one day would be equivalent to 141 days on the surface of the Earth. 361 inches. This regard, there is an interesting phenomenon when approaching the ergosphere of a black hole. The space-time continuum is deformed such that this region can be entered and left while traveling at just under the speed of light. Enduring this for us, Dowd's Nepesh, soul conveys. My eyes, Eineni, my capacity to see and my vision, have become faint, Dob, are languishing and wasting away on account of, Min, this miserable experience, horrid suffering, and great persecution, Oni, this troubling and humbling harassment and constant depression, from Anna, to respond with the answer by being downcast and abased, humiliated and mistreated, oppressed and humbled, depressed and abused. I have summoned you, Kara Otter, I have called out to and communicated with you, Kal Perfect, Yahowah, Yahowah, our Eloah, God as directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his Hayeh, existence and our Shalom, restoration. During each day, Bar Shel Yam, I expose and stretch out, Shatak, I spread out, my open hands to you, El Otter Kafeni. Mizmowr, Song, Psalm 88:9. In a dark place for any length of time, our eyes begin to fail. Without light, we cannot see. It is why Yahowah provided it, speaking it into existence, before anything else. Oni, rendered as a miserable experience with great suffering, is derived from Anna. Its primary meaning, as we have learned, is to provide an answer and reply. But it is also indicative of being mistreated and oppressed, humbled and abused. Used here in conjunction with Kara, the implication is that the Messiah was afflicted on the Mikra of Matzah so that those of us who acknowledge and appreciate what 362 he has achieved will no longer be accountable for our mistakes. We can now come to God with clean and open hands. We no longer have derogatory baggage. It was all discarded in Shaul. And the tags have all been ripped away, so there is no way to associate any of this with us anymore. Chag Matzah is comprised of 3 mikrei. Passover and unyeasted bread result in firstborn children. Do, ha, when and how do you engage, asar, your act, working, kal imperfect, miraculously and wonderfully, pele, in astounding and amazing ways, on behalf of the deceased, la ha-month, when, the souls of the departed were restored, raphaim, the deceased were mended, from Rapha, the healed and reconciled, rise up, kum, stand up, and arise, firmly established, kal imperfect, to openly express their knowledge of you and appreciation for you, Yada Otter, convey an astute awareness and understanding of you. From Yada, to know and understand, hyphal imperfect. Pause now and reflect upon this, weighing in the balance what has been acquired and rejected, Selah, recognize what has been purchased, bought and paid for, and now possessed as a result of knowing what to repudiate. Mizmowr, Song, Psalm 88:10. Dowd was the foremost expert on this subject. He would be the only person to have died twice and lived thrice. Just as Yahowah had acted miraculously during his return to fulfill Pesach and Matzah and would continue to perform magnificently to enable Bikurim and Shabuah, eternal life would follow for God's partner in healing his people. Even in death, there is a wonderful expectation for those who know and revere Yah. He has promised to act, and has already engaged, on behalf of those who acknowledge him. 363. After having deposited our guilt in Shaul, Dowd is also anticipating that his temporary estrangement will give way to a wonderful celebration of life during firstborn children. This song exists to Yada, acknowledge and appreciate what has been achieved. I often feel the same way. And I hope one day to be standing at the back of the reception room of my Heavenly Father's home, such that I'm able to see the expression on God's face as he greets for the first time one of his children, someone I may have played a role of introducing to the covenant. I can't imagine anything more fulfilling or gratifying. The purpose of the sacrifice of unyeasted bread, the result it accomplished, was to prepare the way to miraculously perfect mortal souls, enabling us to enter Yahowah's home. It remains the most marvelous accomplishment of the Mikrei. While this next statement could simply be a continuance of the previous thought, I suspect that it might well represent the other side of the redemptive equation. Considering the unsavory souls he would have encountered in Shaul, including Korach and Tutmos, he appears to be asking a probing question, one I have contemplated many times. For Yahowah to be fair, for there to be justice and recompense, those who have been harmed must be assured that the souls of the men and women who abused them are held accountable. So, when and how are those who died without embracing the Berith or answering the Mikra shown that, while life for them is over, their tormentors are being punished? Mercy demands no less. The reason that I'm proposing this interpretation is that everyone who rises after death knows and appreciates Yahowah. This knowledge has assured these individuals that firstborn children and the promise of the Shabat are the results of Passover and unyeasted bread. To know 364 is to know one's fate because he is trustworthy and loving. This interpretation is advanced by the definition of a bar down. It describes the place where the souls of those who were misled about Yahowah are destroyed, ceasing to exist, but not until after having witnessed God judging and condemning the political and religious actors responsible for confusing them. When and how, as an indication that a question is being asked, is he told to recount in writing, communicating accurately, sapar, is his written record conveyed and accounted for, Paul imperfect third person masculine singular, concerning the grave and the cessation of biological life, var keba, in the transition from living to dying, after the cessation of mortal life and burial, about your mercy, kesed otter, your kindness and compassion, your unyielding devotion, enduring love, favor, and affection. As a result of your trustworthiness, otter, your unchanging, always steadfast, reliable, and dependable honesty and truth, from a man, to be supportive and loyal, upholding and affirming, about going astray and perishing, bar down, concerning misled souls which vanish forever, dissipating into nothingness, from a bad, to perish, be exterminated, and vanish. To stray and become lost and own, all things pertaining to this subject. Mizmowr, Song, Psalm 88:11. Sapar is a verb that should not be taken lightly because it speaks of a full and accurate, written accounting of the information which is available to us. It is so rare that someone is motivated to create a detailed assessment of Yahowah's trustworthy and reliable approach to being merciful in writing that the subject of Sapar is masculine singular. This is especially true when it comes to accurately relating what Dowd has accomplished by fulfilling Pesach 365 and Matzah on behalf of Bikurim and Shaboah so that fewer souls perish. Yahowah's love, compassion, and mercy never waver. He is true to his word. But that is both good and bad news. It means that those who have relied upon him are assured of an eternity with him. It also means that God will be known for his firmness and unchanging nature here, now, and in a bar down, the place where souls cease to exist. Therefore, those who spent their lives praying to false gods and ignoring the only actual God, rather than listening to him, will cease to exist. Thankfully for them, the fact that Yahowah is compassionate will keep the victims of politics and religion out of Shaul. So, while a bar down is a far cry from Shamaim, it is far better than Shaul. A bar down is not purgatory. It isn't a halfway house and there is no work release program or mulligans. Every soul entering a bar down will be processed accordingly once a determination has been made regarding their fate. Our time to know and choose is now, not after our lives are over. That is why this third question is being asked of those living today. Dowd wants his people to be aware of and capitalize upon what he and his father have done. He is, therefore, directing their attention to the one who his father inspired to write the written accounting of these events. When and how, as an indication that a question is being asked as to whether, will Yada be made aware and come to understand, will Yada come to know, acknowledge and comprehend the cause and consequence of this realization, Nephil imperfect, he finds out and then benefits from the result of knowing forevermore, your phenomenal counsel, amazing achievements, wonderful signs, exceptional testimony, and marvelous miracles, Pele Otter, special offerings and distinguishing and uncommon nature, and, your 366 means to being right resulting in vindication, Zardaka Otter, your justice, truthfulness, and rational means to decide, leading to an acquittal for having been declared correct and innocent, while in the obscurity and darkness, Bahar Choshik, in the absence of light and resulting blindness where the truth is concealed and hope grows dim, of the realm, Bar Eres in the land, of being oblivious, forgetful, and failing to remember, Nashaya, of avoidance, omission, and deprivation. Mizmowr, Song, Psalm 88:12. Based upon everything Yahowah has conveyed throughout the prophets on how he is going to reveal his testimony to his people as we approach his return, it is apparent that the unaware have been afforded one last opportunity to Yada Yahowah. Specifically, the answer to this question is found in Yeshaya 14's portrayal of the Chota. God has gone to great effort to make certain that his people would know about his Son, our Messiah and Savior, while the opportunity remains open to accept their gift. Humanity has been living in the land of ignorance for a long time. Although recently, political, religious, militant, and conspiratorial rhetoric have become especially shrill, and particularly in Israel, which is once again a house divided. The preponderance of people are unaware of who Yahowah is and are clueless regarding what he achieved by working with his firstborn son. And while I have devoted 22 years to righting this wrong, the truth remains exceedingly unpopular. And this is in spite of the vociferous and compelling counsel Yahowah, Dowd, and Yeshaya have provided. Team Yah's achievements are amazing, the testimony is exceptional, and the enduring love is phenomenal. Embracing what they have said and done leads to our vindication and life everlasting while basking in the light. And the alternative is dire. 367 Knowing all of this now, aware that the victory over death was won on Passover, realizing that Israel was exonerated during unyeasted bread, and acknowledging the attempt at adoption into Yahowah's covenant family on firstborn children, these prophetic statements are especially reassuring. Never lose sight of the awesome and personal sacrifices our Messiah made during Pesach and Matzah to enable the miracle of Bikurim and the enrichment of Shabat. That is why this prophetic portrait of what Dowd's Nipesh endured is so important. Making this contrast evident for us, there is a martial proverb which compares the observant and thoughtful to the faithful. It reads, "The remembrance and memory, Zika, the recollections and renown, of the vindicated for having been right, Zadik, of those who are correct, truthful, upright, validated, and perfected, is a blessing, La Baraka, is a beneficial gift. But the reputation, Washem, but the renowned designation, of the religious, Rasha, of the errant who are in opposition to the standard, the incorrect, immoral, irrational, and irreverent, is forgotten, Rakab, is a fungus and rotten, a parasite prompting decay, a source of decomposition, worm rot, Kal imperfect. The judgment, Lab, the heart, thinking, attitude, and inclinations of the learned who understand, Chakam, of the discerning who are observant and thoughtful, of the knowledgeable and wise, will grasp and accept, Lakek, will obtain for themselves, choosing to select, Kal imperfect, the instructive conditions regarding the constituted offering and expectations, Mitzvah, the authoritative directions and written instructions which comprise the precepts and terms of what has been established, from my, to consider the who, what, why, 368 where, when, and how of Zawa, appointing, establishing, and constituting the message, then enjoining it by conveying the instructions and directions regarding what has been commissioned. But, Wa, the lips and speech, Safa, the mouth and language of the foolish, a will, of simpletons who are ignorant and irrational, of the stubborn and unreceptive, of the genuinely stupid because they are quarrelsome, rejecting evidence and reason, are ruinous, Lobot, cause them to be thrust aside and cast down. Martial, word picture, Proverb 10:7-8. Sound advice. Better wise than stupid. Having posed these questions for us to ponder, the Nipesh states his position. As for me, I am for you, Wa Eni El Otter, Yahowah, Yahowah, an accurate presentation of the name of Eloah, God as guided by his Torah, instructions regarding his higher existence. Being distinguished for my intervention, Tafalamai, being set apart and unique for my mediation, from Pala, to be distinctly set apart and distinguished through separation, being unique, special, and uncommon, I have cried out to be free, Shawa, I have pleaded for release from this difficult and dangerous situation which is intensely desperate. Peel perfect first person singular, the request brings the desired result in due time, in the morning, Wabaha Boka, at the end of the night and time of darkness. Before sunrise, after the devastating and degenerative sacrifice and due consideration, coming to meet you and be received by you, Kadamota, to approach you and be welcomed by you as has been the case in the past and will be so forevermore. Peel imperfect energic none, the object emphatically enjoys the ongoing effect. Mizmowr, Song, Psalm 88:13. 369 We should all be announcing, as for me, I am for you, Yahowah. It matters not what others believe, I know what and who is right. Dowd's sacrifice was now complete. He had done what he set out to achieve. Having intervened in the lives of his people, he was the most distinguished of men. And on the morning of Bikurim, he would return to heaven and be received by his Father. Having endured the brunt of the Mikra, he was now living the promise. His release from Shaul was imminent. Come morning, father and son would be celebrating Bikurim, firstborn children. Mission accomplished. Should you be checking, you will notice that Hebrew, English dictionaries are wont to render Tafilah's prayer. But why? The most similar word, the one appearing immediately before it, and the one scribed identically to it, Tifla, is defined as wrong, even repulsive, a fool's folly, something to avoid which is insipid, empty, and hollow. It is abhorrent, unsavory, and unseemly. Tifla is derived from tafel, to act stupidly and talk nonsense. It is used to describe communication which is ridiculous because it is contrary to evidence and reason. Those engaged in tafel are foolish, showing that they lack understanding. They are prone to smearing over and whitewashing the truth such that their message is worthless, having no value. And while that is God's perception of religion and prayer, it's hardly an endorsement of the institutionalized definition. The next word following tafela is tiflazith, which means to shudder in horror and live in fear as a result of being terrorized. That does not work in favor of the prayer definition either. To justify the religious rendering of tafela, lexicons will say that it is based upon palal, to intervene. And while I support that interpretation, what does intercession have to 370 do with prayer? Further, when looking for tafela's actionable root, pala is a better fit, sharing 3 of the 4 Hebrew letters in common rather than just 2 of 4. And pala addresses things that are near and dear to Yahowah, being distinct, separated, distinguished, set apart, unique, special, and uncommon. It is rendered to make a wonderful difference, and to be marvelously set apart. Therefore, in this context, Dowd's soul was distinguished by having intervened on our behalf. This realization affirms the primary purpose of this prophetic statement because it describes what occurred on Bikurim following Pesach and Matzah. Dowd's soul was released from Sheol so that it could be reunited with the Spirit and return to Yahowah. As the sun rose on firstborn children, God's firstborn observed the Mikra, invitation to be called out and meet by doing this very thing. In this light, Kadam, to meet was chosen because Dowd's Nipesh would be fulfilling the Mikra, invitation to meet. His soul was not being resurrected. He was not returning to reside as a man among men. He was, instead, being Mikra, called out and welcomed by Yahowah in Shamaim. He is anticipating being received by the one who had dispatched him. Now that we have reached the dawning of the new day and the arrival of the Mikra of Bikurim, the Nipesh, consciousness of the son is being welcomed home by his father. Their relationship will be as it was in the past and remain so forevermore. Unfortunately, still groping in the dark and translating an entirely different text, the King James Version renders El as but unto thee, Shahweh as I cried, ignoring its request for help, Yahowah's name as O Lord, Boker and Tafela as morning and prayer but in the reverse order, and Kadam as prevent thee. In so doing, they missed the entirety of the prophetic miracle of the soul's 371 return on Bikurim following the ordeal of Matzah, but unto thee have I cried, O Lord, and in the morning shall my prayer prevent thee. Say what? There are many questions presented within the texts of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms which are asked strictly for our consideration. In that he was a prophet, Dowd's Nipesh was fully briefed and completely aware of when, why, how, and where he would be dispatched, extended, and received. However, until we comprehend the implications of we cannot benefit from what he accomplished. Hence the many explanations. That said, it is obvious that the religious were unable to dissuade Dowd's Nipesh, soul from using God's name. Yahowah, Yahowah, our Eloah, God has directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his existence and our Shalom, restoration, where, when, why, and how, Lama, for what reason, did you foul and then cast off, Zanich, did you make odious and then spurn, adding a revolting stench prior to rejecting, Kalimperfect, my soul, my conscious ability to observe and respond, Nipesheni, my persona, concealing, Satar, veiling and covering, your presence, Panaotta, your appearance, from me, Min Eni, separated and set apart from me. Mizmowr, Song, Psalm 88:14. When? And where was during Passover and unyeasted bread on Moriah and then into Shaul, hell. Why? Was to fulfill Pesach and Matzah to enable the promises of eternal life and redemption. How? Was with Dowd's body as the lamb and his soul serving to convey our guilt into the place of separation. Cognizant that his soul had been temporarily removed from his association with Yahowah, slathered with the stench of religion and the odious nature of our guilt, and then dispatched to Shaul to reject these foul things, 372 spurning them, Dowd was asking these questions expecting that his people would be able to answer them. It is as if Dowd invented Zanich to precisely convey what was occurring during his fulfillment of Matzah. Unfortunately, the people for whom he had made these sacrifices still don't know the answers. Most haven't even pondered the questions. They have remained willfully unreceptive, living in denial of everything Dowd represents and has done for them. Through Judaism, God's people have voided the benefit of the Messiah's Passover and unyeasted bread fulfillments. His disappointment, his frustration, must be enormous considering how relentlessly his people have been trying to discredit him. What follows chronicles the most generous gift ever offered and the horrible response of his people. The rebellion against Dowd's sacrifice is among the most disgraceful episodes in the long history of Judaism, a religion born at this moment to do this very thing. I bore and carried away, Nasa, I removed and accepted, Cal perfect, your terrible and dreadful religious things, I'm a otter, through the great pains I suffered with my miserable affliction, the agony I endured in a completely unpretentious way, devoid of arrogance, hubris or pride, and was persecuted and pained, suffering great hardship, when breathing the last breath and ready to expire, Wagawa, for the scattered sheep, Minnoa, for the flock. So, I am emotionally drained and frustrated, disappointed and perplexed, Pun, I am run out and baffled having been annulled and invalidated, Cal imperfect first person singular cohortative, from 4 QPS and used only this once in the Torah and Navi. Mizmowr, Song, Psalm 88:15. 373 The Messiah did this very thing. His soul bore and then carried away the dreadful stench of religion, and the odious nature of politics. Through his affliction and sacrifice, the black sheep and cantankerous goats of Israel could finally come back into the fold and follow their shepherd. But it was not to be, at least not for another 2,000 years. And this rejection of his gift to his people is what has left the foremost Son of God emotionally distraught and frustrated, disappointed and perplexed. How could anyone, much less everyone, deny what he had accomplished at great personal cost? The failure of Israel to accept and benefit from his sacrifice has been more painful than the ordeal. And this is why Yahweh is so sympathetic, grieving on behalf of his Son. Over me, Aleni, your intense grief and sorrow, Charanota, your fretting, anguish and angst, was extended during Pesach but has now passed, Aleni Obar, is because of Pesach, recognizing that Obar is the verb Yahweh uses to explain Passover in the Torah, Cal perfect. Your dismay and concern, Bayou Thota, your apprehension and shock, leave me speechless, Zarmath Eni, silence me. Mizmowr, Song, Psalm 88:16. It was likely the first and last time Dowd was at a loss for words. And so, in this simple statement, we are afforded the insights of 1,000 words. After having fulfilled the 2 most important events in human history, Dowd is surveying the response of Yahweh and Gaum. And he is dismayed by what he sees. Rather than embrace him and gratefully accept his gift, the world discredited its lone savior. They have turned on me and engulf me, Sabab Eni, they encircle and surround me, as they are 374 completely unhinged regarding me, Cal perfect, similar to an inundation of water, Ka Ha-Maim, like the flooding of the sea, throughout the days, Shirl Ha-Yaum, all of the time. Together as a community, and at the same time, Yakad, in unison, as if they were all alike regarding the birth of a single, solitary individual, as part of their annual cycle, they cut me down and seek to discredit me, Nafak al-Eni, each year they come around to slash away at me, Cal perfect. Mizmowr, Song, Psalm 88:17. To deny the fulfillment of Pesach is to exclude the possibility of life everlasting. To disavow matzah is to forego redemption. Most do both, initially led astray by Jews who should have known better and then the Christians who were easily beguiled as a result. In a world approaching 8 billion souls, fewer than 1,000 appreciate what Yahweh and Dowd have done or what Father and Son are offering. Gentiles have built man's most popular religion upon their denial of who did what for whom, as well as when, why, where, and how these sacrifices occurred. And his people, after denying Yahweh for 1,000 years, have spent the next 2,000 negating what Dowd sacrificed for them. Selah, pause now and reflect upon this, weighing in the balance what has been acquired and rejected. Selah, recognize what has been bought and paid for, waiting to be accepted as a result of knowing what to repudiate.